All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to London Tech Week. I am so pleased to be back here. I'm Lizzie Burden, I'm an anchor at Bloomberg TV, and I'd love to welcome our panel to the stage. We're going to be discussing... We're going to be discussing how the UK and Europe more generally can compete with the US and China, particularly when it comes to tech, but specifically as well on AI. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, should we all just introduce ourselves? Baroness Lane Fox, I'd like to start with you.
I'm glad you used my formal title. I'm Martha. I am a true dot-com dinosaur back to see you from the late 90s, but now I do a bunch of stuff across the public and private sector.
Hey, Markus Willig, founder and CEO of Bolt. Started the business back in Estonia in 2013 as a 19-year-old kid.
Hi, I'm Saranga, originally a CEO and founder of a company called Blinks, which I took public about 15 years ago, and now I'm a venture capitalist at Balderton Capital.
Mike Maticola, I'm the CBO at CoreWeave. I lead our international growth. It's a year since we were here and announced our expansion to the EMEA market last year, so really excited to be back and with all of you today.
All right, well, so good to have you all with us here at London Tech Week. Thank you for making time for us. We are going to have some questions, hopefully, from the audience if we've got time at the end, so please do send them in. But Saranga, I want to start with you. As a tech investor who founded a company in the US and then came back to Britain, how do the two compare and why did you choose to come back to the UK?
Yeah, look, I think they are incredibly different, and they always have been, but what I'm excited about with the UK is the rate of change that we're experiencing, the trajectory that we're on. So obviously Silicon Valley has been doing what it's been doing for a very, very long time. You arguably put its roots down to the 1950s or 60s. There was nothing like that here in the UK at that time. Really, the tech world here started actually with people like Martha about in the sort of late 80s and 90s. And considering that we started so much further behind, the rate at which we've been able to catch up and get close has been really impressive in the UK, but also across the rest of Europe. So I'm pretty excited about that.
I feel like we're going to get a history lesson here because
We definitely are not, do not worry.
You've been on both the business side and the policy-making side. What would you say are the biggest advantages and disadvantages of the UK for tech?
I would say that we are not very good at reminding ourselves how far we've come and how quickly. If I think back to the late 90s, just about remember that, we used to go to meetups for tech startups, and it would literally just be me and Brent in the room.
Brent Hoberman
and our lastminute.com idea. And now, I think I read the other day that there's a new tech business started in the UK every hour, something insane. And as we've heard this morning, lots of energy around investment here. So I think we're not very good at reminding ourselves how far we've come relatively quickly. And that's super important. The best things about working here are that I think we have the right values. And that's the thing I come back to again and again and again, and never more so than now. You heard the Prime Minister earlier say posture matters. The posture he takes about this stuff really matters, that he's committed to building AI and technology, and that's the most animated I've seen him about it while he's been Prime Minister. And that's a huge deal. But more than that, we are a stable country. We are a country that cares about the values that you put into businesses, that matches profit and purpose, that cares about diversity. And I'm not just talking about having people that look like me in businesses. I'm talking about the deeper values that a country has. And for me, that is absolutely immutable and fundamental, as well as then the capital flows coming in and out and all the rest of it, and the general direction of travel. But that's the thing that I would like to remind ourselves of.
Well, I want to dive into some of the Prime Minister's announcements in more detail, but you talk about swag, essentially. Marcus, can I ask you, do you think
Marcus has swag.
Well, you talk about the need to big
ourselves up. He definitely has swag.
Marcus, do you think that one of the problems with European founders is that there's a lack of swag? That when it comes to selling the idea, we just don't do it as boldly as American founders do?
Absolutely. And I think that this is very true across Europe in general. I think we just have a culture where I think being ambitious is not being rewarded enough, and I don't think we celebrate entrepreneurs as much as they do in the US. But we also got to recognize that it has a feedback loop, which is that If you're a young kid like me back in Estonia 20 years ago, and then in our case we had Skype being built in Estonia, that obviously gave me a lot of confidence, where I saw that you can start from anywhere, you don't need to have a lot of resources, and you can go and build one of the biggest products the world has ever seen. But obviously not a lot of kids are grown up with that mentality in Europe, and they don't have these first-hand experiences where they see people joining these companies, building world-changing outcomes, and becoming billionaires while doing that. So I think that it's also going to sort of fix itself. Once we have more success, it's going to breed more success.
Okay, so founders in the audience, I want to see some swag throughout London Tech Week. Mike, what prompted CoreWeave's interest in the UK market then? Of course, we've had huge investment here from US companies, the likes of Google, Amazon, Apple, Meta, all spending billions here. Why the UK for you? So,
you know, if you take a step back and look at the UK market, so the UK has a rich history of researchers, you know, a startup ecosystem, big universities that are really just a production line of talent. So obviously with us growing our business around the world, we really needed to be here. We clearly needed to be here. The other part would be if we looked across the UK landscape, even a year ago, so we announced launching CoreWeave literally here at London Tech Week a year ago today. And we could see a huge gap that there just wasn't any AI infrastructure available in the market to these enterprises, startups, researchers today. And it's a gap we felt we could close very quickly. So we launched our business here and we delivered 2 data centers in the UK very quickly by Christmas of last year with the latest tech, so with H200s running the UK, which didn't exist before then. And if you look out beyond that as well, I'm going to steal shamelessly from Jensen this morning as well, so where he mentioned every company in the UK will be a tech company in the future. And if you think about our business, we're really the compute layer, the engine of everything you need to build a technology business. So when we look at the market here, we see so much growth potential, so much talent, so much growth potential going forward for decades to come. And ultimately, every company, if you want to stay in the game, you're going to need to transition to an AI-first company, and you'll need compute to do that. So that's why we're here.
So on that talent point, Martha, you've been very vocal about the need for digital understanding at all levels of society. The Prime Minister this morning announced this partnership to train 7.5 million workers in artificial intelligence by 2030. Is that enough to compete with the US and China?
It's better than not having that ambition, for sure. And what you hope then happens is kind of what we've all just said, which is then that confidence breeds the confidence, and then that leads to more people from other sectors and industries, and then you sort of get the network effect of those 7.5 million. But I was just talking to Marcus behind stage, and he was regaling me of why the UK is a bit of a tough market. I hope you don't mind me recounting this. And some of the things that we were talking about are just the complexity of dealing with HMRC in this country, the complexity of dealing with some of the regulators, the complexity of getting some answers out of government. And I've always thought that one of the things the UK is missing a trick on, we're a relatively small country with a big ambition. We've got all of this capital. We've got this brilliant position between the US and Europe and China. Why can't we be bolder about sort of dunking all of the people that make decisions in this country in a level of digital understanding that would give them an ability to make better policy decisions, better budgetary decisions, and so on? Doesn't feel that hard, you know? I feel like I'm going to events and I bump into the same people again and again and again. Why can't all those people be kind of brainwashed by the AI world, the world of tech that we are all living in? And I think it would make a huge difference. So I think, of course, you have to train workers. Of course, that 7.5 million isn't enough, and that's just the start. But in addition, we need to make sure that the people that are actually holding the power in countries, who are leading hospital groups, who are running schools, who are making policy decisions in Parliament, who are in departments making budget decisions, they are also not allowed to escape, because that's, of course, where a lot of the change happens.
Well, maybe we can replace the civil service with AI.
No, I don't think we should do that. And I've worked a lot in the civil service, and recently have been chairing the Digital Advisory Centre of Government's long mouthful, co-chairing that. And there's obviously a role for incredible public servants. Of course there is, but there's a lot of stuff that they could be enabled to do better, faster decision-making, and better, faster ability to deliver the services that we need. Of course they could. So yes, things are going to shift. Are we going to have the same number in the future as we have now? No. But that's not to say we don't need great people making good decisions.
Well, so coming back to the education point, Saranga, of course, President Trump is kind of pulling up the drawbridge on foreign students. Is that an opportunity that the UK and Europe should be seizing, and how?
Yeah, so just stepping back from that slightly, but I'll get to the question, I promise. I think that the education piece is critical. It's great that we have this very unique location in the UK. Jensen called it the Goldilocks position of being sort of, close to the US, long historical ties there. The US companies have historically had a lot of base here, but at the same time, ability to sort of serve the European market as well as our own market. That's a great place to be, and we should enjoy and invite the infrastructure that will bring and so on. But it's no good if other people come and do that to the country. I think the critical thing is to ensure that the knowledge, the learnings, the skills of that are dispersed properly across the entire country. And that's at every level, right? It's a building, data centers, which are sort of physical, technical jobs. It's about the science that comes on top. It's about the building of applications and having the ambition that Marcus talked about to build great companies on top of it all. There's a whole sort of stack of things that you can achieve. And bringing all of that together is going to be great, because it means that we can sort of plant these infrastructural seeds, but hopefully a lot more will grow from it than just a data center. Right? For me, that's the test of success. It's not, did we build a data center in outside Leeds? It's did that data center then go on and plant a whole field of other opportunities, businesses, ideas, people, and so on. If we achieve that, I think it will be huge. To your actual question about the sort of where we are with the geopolitical thing, I think you look at the countries that are most successful at innovation, and they are ones where there's strong agreement and alignment on core values, like understanding that ideas come from different people, working together, being open to different ideas, being able to speak up with your particular idea against maybe the trend or the flow that's sort of the main one at the moment. And Silicon Valley has done that brilliantly for the last 50 years, and that's one of the reasons it is what it is. Some of those values are being challenged right now in the US, and if they are genuinely going to be long-term challenged there, then there's a huge opportunity for everywhere else in the world to suddenly step up and be that place. And we see that here, right? We have incredibly global universities that are full of brains from all over the world, and if we can get those people to not just come here and study, but also start businesses and so on, then I think we'll benefit.
Okay. Well, on the data center point, I take your point that essentially where the Prime Minister's committed an extra £1 billion to scale up compute power, there's no point asking whether that's enough, because it needs to be interwoven with other parts of our tech policy as well, right?
Exactly.
So, Mike, is there a risk that US tech firms are going to look elsewhere if the UK doesn't have enough infrastructure support to support the AI revolution? We've got the Chancellor's spending review this week. Do you feel like what we're talking about is enough of a priority on the government's agenda? Because what I've been hearing is that what she's going to prioritise is health and defence.
Yeah, so I think, firstly, I applaud the commitments that have been made, that we've heard about in the last 24 hours or so, with significant multi-billions in investment committed. Look, the reality of that is we can't, celebrate that for too long, because it won't last very long. So if you look at the, deploying infrastructures, you can spend, billions very, very quickly. So, it's great that we have a start, but we need to make sure that, government and private investors and the whole ecosystem is coming together to make sure there's a pipeline of investment coming into the UK. We can't, celebrate this commitment for the next couple of years and then just wait. And then to Saranga's point as well, that's going to give, basically critical tools to the portfolios that he works with, the likes of Marcus and others as well, the access to the technology they need to grow. So in terms of, to your question as well, is there any risk of, investment going elsewhere? So, I think in terms of we already talked about it, the universities, the talent, the ecosystem here, it's really strong. I don't think it's going anywhere fast. From our perspective, when we're looking at the UK and how we deploy more capital, so, the biggest challenge for us is thinking through energy cost within the UK market. So, if I look at the data center bills that I'm getting every month right now, basically UK data center bills are typically somewhere between 35 to 40% of the running cost of that data center. If I'm in the Nordics or Spain or the US, it's kind of 15, 20%. So you're pretty much doubling the costs there. And the reality is the likes of Saranga's portfolios can't afford to pay those kind of rates for infrastructure. Infrastructure is incredibly expensive. And obviously, you know, if you're raising money as a startup, then oftentimes 70%, maybe more of your raise is going on to infrastructure. So people are really frugal about where they're going to spend their money. So we have to work on the energy challenge and get the UK's cost structure more competitive so
What's the answer
it
to
provides
that?
access. So we're working quietly, hopefully not quietly for too long. We'll have some announcements soon, but on
Feel
how
free,
we can...
we're all listening.
Not quite ready yet today. We'll be there soon. And it won't be next year. That's far too long. So, you know, we have a lot of access to renewables in the UK. The reality is today up in the North Sea, you've got, you know, huge plots of energy that are available that we're not even using today. Actually, we're paying the providers to not send it into the grid, right? So in terms of, the UK is very small, so I don't really have concerns around latency on where we put a data center. So we should really be plugging in data centers as close to as green power, cheap green power as possible. And then obviously the other part that we've got to take really seriously is the nuclear discussion, and particularly getting SMRs stood up quickly. And we need the government's help on regulation, on planning to accelerate that as quickly as possible. And then we're giving the ecosystem a massive boost because, you know, the energy cost is cutting in half, and then you're kind of on a par with the US and the Nordics and Spain then as well. So that's the challenge we're working on. As soon as we crack that, we'll be deploying significantly more capital in the UK.
Okay, so a bit more joined up thinking between perhaps Ed Miliband and Peter Kyle you would like to see in the UK. Talking of announcements, Marcus, we're waiting for one from you. We're waiting for your Bolt IPO. And I'm wondering what the UK could do, what the Chancellor particularly could do to persuade you to list in London. When it comes to regulation, is there any particular red tape that you'd like to be got rid of?
Well, first, when we look at the IPOs that have happened in the UK over the last 5 years, how many of them are left? Why is this actually just last week discussed that they're going to be flipping to New York? Deliveroo was just currently in the midst of an acquisition by a US company and so on. So, I mean, we got to face it that, I mean, Europe doesn't have a great track record of, first of all, even having IPOs, not to mention having them actually stay here. So I do think that, like, the governments very seriously need to think through what are the root causes of that. One of those is just very simply lack of liquidity. So when you look at the daily statistics today, the US daily trading volumes are about 10 times that what you observe all across Europe and then the UK included. And specifically when you look at the retail activity, it's even about 20 times lower. So just people across Europe are not investing in public companies, not investing in equities, same with the pension funds. So there just isn't enough money being deployed to the right asset classes. So where is all that money sitting? And especially in cases like Germany or Italy, it's just sitting in cash, which is absolutely horrible. It's very value destructive. Or they're sitting in very low yield, low risk bonds. So we do need to change this mindset of risk significantly across the continent. Otherwise, we're going to be just continuing to fall behind. And I think that's one of the few areas where the government can do a lot. It can incentivize pension funds and retail investors to start to invest significantly more and make the local markets much more attractive. And it's very sad. I mean, most European companies, us or most people here, I mean, we're raising 80% of the funding from the US, even though we're based in Europe. And the reason for it is there aren't enough European investors willing to pay the same prices as the US ones. So
have you written off London?
Haven't written off anything, and then, I mean, I'm very optimistic that Europe one day is going to get there. I mean, I'm from Europe, I want to support the continent, but I mean, it's just currently shooting its own goals all the time.
To Marcus's point, Saranga, this morning we had Qualcomm agreeing to buy the London-listed semiconductor company AlphaWave to expand its tech for AI. Is the UK capital market fit for purpose?
I'm going to controversially say it doesn't matter.
Why?
Because I really don't think it matters which public stock market you're on in the end. If I sort of really peel it all back and think about it, what matters? What matters is that if an idea or a company is built in a particular place, you know, you can benefit from the jobs that brings and all of the sort of economic benefits that brings. Also, what matters is that if you've invested in that company from a given country, whether that's Estonia or the UK or anywhere else, that the benefits of that amazing investment are paid back into that community. And really, if those things hold, I'm not sure it matters where it ultimately ends up publicly, because the global, you know, money is global. It just really, really is. And the reality is that the US, particularly in NASDAQ and to some extent the New York Stock Exchange, has a real kind of monopoly on the specialisms and the analysis and the understanding required to be able to understand these technology companies, give them the multiple they deserve, give them the liquidity they deserve, to your point, Marcus. And I don't mind that. I mean, if a UK company is funded by great UK investors and therefore UK pension funds and UK savers and UK people on the street, and then that company goes and lists in New York, and that means that those people see the ability to cash those shares in and make a huge profit and pay for their pensions or whatever else that matters to them, that's great. And as long as the people who built that company and the jobs that that company creates continue to be built here, then I'm not sure I care about where it is from a stock market point of view.
Martha, do you agree with that? Should the Chancellor be losing sleep every time someone chooses to list in New York over London?
I think the Chancellor must be losing sleep over a lot of things right now, so I don't wish less sleep on her. But what I would say is I completely agree, but I think it does matter in terms of presentationally, and back to the Prime Minister's posture point. If it looks as though there's a reason why you can't trust the markets here, if you're not kind of really giving that symbolic view that we are a place where great companies build, stay, list, do the rest of it, then I think it does matter marginally to the whole ecosystem. But I take your point. I think the bigger challenge, as we all know, is that there is just a capital gap. The Chancellor has put a huge emphasis on pension funds opening up and being more risky in how they think about their investing, and we should keep that pressure up because it's a really important bit of the puzzle to make sure that there is more capital unlocked, not just for that seed piece, but for the scale-up bit to grow companies.
Well, indeed, I was interviewing her not so long ago, and she told me never say never when it comes to mandating pension funds to invest in UK assets. Yeah. Is that wise?
I think it's important to make sure that pension funds are doing a better job at being more of a fuel for our local economy.
Saranga?
Yeah, I was going to say, so I think so I actually agree completely. I think trying to sit here and say, oh, if we tweak the rules on the London Stock Exchange, we'll attract great companies like yours to list there, that we're missing the point. The real reason why a company will or won't float on a particular market is access to capital and the liquidity that provides, and ultimately the multiple that will be paid on that market, right? And what we need to realize is that that's not something that we achieve by changing rules. It's something we achieve by changing the supply and the volume of supply of investment. So, we should do that. We should make the changes we need there. Martha's right, it's come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. If you look at the percentage of UK and European pension funds that are invested in private rather than public markets, it's still de minimis compared to other countries, not just the US, by the way. Same is true of Canada, same is true of Australia, and so on. So it's not just America. Other people get this too. And then the other thing to look at is the amount of tech versus non-tech. And again, European and UK pension funds, on average, invest way lower in tech than their international counterparts. So we should fix those things. But while we fix those things, I don't think we need to get worried about trying to fix the stock market. In the meantime, yes, some companies will go elsewhere, but that's okay. If you fix these fundamental problems, in the end, you create a much, much better overall ecosystem.
If I can bring us back to this competition between Europe, the US, and China, we've also got somebody in the White House who is not fond of DEI. President Trump has been rolling back diversity movements. Does that create an opportunity, again, for European tech to advance when we do promote diversity, Martha?
It's not just an opportunity because of what's happening in the White House. I don't want to answer this question anymore. This is not directed at you, Lizzie, but these men should be answering the question because it's not us that are the problem here. It is the challenge of making sure that teams are diverse. This is so like white noise now, so I apologize. 2% of venture capital goes to female-only founded businesses. It's a bit better if it's combination teams, and I'm a big fan. That's obviously my own background of combination teams. But the point is bigger than that. It's not just about founders. It's about making sure that we have representation across the piece, because it's always about power and money and where structurally society, the economy is going. And if women are not getting the same access to those jobs, that money, that power, that decision-making, then we're going backwards, we're not going forwards. And at the minute, guess what? We are going backwards. We are actually going backwards. And that, for someone that's knocked around in this stuff for 30 years, I seem to have something stuck in my throat, is really depressing.
I asked you because you've done some amazing work in this area, and I know that you pointed out that there's a higher percentage of women in the House of Lords than work in tech, which is saying something. But I'm going to throw this over to the men.
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity for European tech because of what the President is doing on diversity? Marcus?
I think there is. And specifically when you look at the UK as well.
Lucky Marcus, because look, I have a stick.
So actually, when you look at all the unicorns in the UK, and especially the largest ones over the last 10 years, the vast majority of them actually have not been built by Brits. They've actually been built by people who relocated here quite recently. So I do think that if we double down on that and we're able to get the best talent in the world to move to Europe and start building companies here, agnostic of their demographic background, I think that's a fantastic opportunity. And we should absolutely use it because we don't have many other advantages to double down on.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, it's sort of President Trump's opinions are irrelevant because even without him and his perspective, the number of women in technology, let's just take that measure of diversity, is just dismally low. And it is here in Europe and it is in the US as well. And you see that across the board, unfortunately, from sort of rank and file engineers all the way through to founders, through to, of course, VCs. It's a huge problem in venture. I'm on a board of an organization called Diversity VC that's trying to fix it. We've done so much work, the team have done so much work over the last 10 years, and yet the needle is, it's moving, but it's barely moving, and it's certainly not moved anywhere near enough. And it is a huge opportunity because, honestly, if you genuinely believe in the sort of pure science of venture, it's all about contrarian people having an insight and then having the support to go follow that insight, pull the thread, and build something really amazing. Many of them will fail to do it, but every now and again, one will do something remarkable. And having people who look the same, sound the same, have exactly the same background, think the same, you're fundamentally limiting that opportunity, right? I mean, they will do a brilliant job in their little world, but what about the rest of it? And I personally utterly believe in that. And until we do a better job of opening that, I mean, again, A, we need to because we owe it to people, but B, if we do it, I think we can make a lot of money, so just make it simple in that sense.
I agree, and I'm really sorry, I'm sure you want to answer, but I cannot help myself. I have to jump in again because I think we focus too much on entrepreneurship as the only vector through which to change this. And I think for lots of reasons, we know there are more female entrepreneurs actually in this country than there are male, whether it's a woman running a hairdressing salon, a mobile hairdressing salon, or somebody who's doing something alongside, running a childcare business, whatever it might be. I think what we need to recognize is that it's not just at the entrepreneurship layer in the stack, if you like, it's also just the profoundly disturbing numbers when you look at the makers and the users of this stuff. And I saw some numbers recently looking at how much people are using Gen AI, the numbers are off the charts, 800 million users worldwide, all the stuff everybody knows, and once I'm sure seen Mary Meeker's mammoth report last weekend, but women are not using it in the same volumes as men, and that matters. So it's not just about the sharp edge of building companies, it's actually way deeper than that. And I think that's the level at which it's more concerning.
Mike, your take.
Sorry.
So I think, if I look back across my career personally, so I left the UK in 2010, and since then I've expated. I lived all over the world pretty much. And, if I look back at probably the highest performing team I've ever led, we had 11 different nationalities and about a 50-50 split between male and female. And it's definitely the strongest team that I've had the privilege to lead. So I think, look, ultimately, if you open up your arms, open up your doors to people that don't get the chances elsewhere, you're going to do incredibly well. You don't need to motivate. You don't need to get up every day and challenge thinking because everybody's thinking the same. So, yeah, I think it's completely natural that embrace it and you'll see great results.
Well, on this inclusive, hopeful note, I would love to thank our panel so much for all of your insights this morning. It's been really interesting to hear from you. It always is at Tech Week. The world's changed so much since the last time I was on this stage last year, and just to see where the UK stands in that all, it really is just fascinating. Thank you to our panel.